It's our turn to get recycled.
My name is Breanne. I've been working with the Regional Environmental Action Committee on their Plastics Remanufacturing Project as part of the Community Service Learning Program offered through the University of Alberta. Today, I will be interviewing Corey Saban. Corey is the founder of ReWaste here in Edmonton, where he remanufactures and repurposes plastic that would otherwise be labeled as waste and put into the landfills. Can you tell us about ReWaste and how you got started remanufacturing plastic waste?
Since my time in construction, I always questioned what happens with plastic waste or waste in general and thought there's a better way to handle it. So when I was laid off, I had time to look into what happens with our household plastic waste and can I handle it any different? So I started doing a lot of research just around plastic waste and small scale recycling and came across precious plastics, and it was a wealth of knowledge and easy to understand. And so I took that model and just tried to explore it further. And I just started using some household appliances just to start and see what we'd be able to produce, and quickly realized that you can do quite a bit with plastic. Then it just slowly evolved into purchasing small scale precious plastic equipment like a shredder and a small scale injection machine. And those were purchased from Citizen Scientific Workshop out of Idaho. So they're great small scale pieces of equipment that has helped us continue to prove the concept. And so now what we do is we work with municipalities, businesses, and people to divert their plastic waste from landfills and transform it into 100% recycled plastic products. So yeah, right now it's getting some traction, and we'll be looking to move out of the garage shortly.
Working with the town of Beaumont?
That's where we first launched our pilot project. So thankfully they're a very forward-thinking municipality. They have about 20,000 people for a population, and we were able to launch a pilot project with them just to show what could be done with plastic waste, show some end markets, but more importantly, just give other options into how we can handle plastic. And then just slowly from there, we started working with more businesses. A lot of people just have been in contact about their household waste. But another project that we did early on, which was very informative, was with Goodwill Industries of Alberta. So they have a granulator in their impact center in Edmonton. For whatever plastic products don't sell in 4 weeks, they bring to their impact center to shred down into a plastic flake. There's no sorting or by type or by color. It's just mixed plastics. And we were able to launch a pilot project with them to see what we could do with the plastic flake. And we applied it to wall protection within their impact center to protect it from shopping carts or baskets within their stores, because their drywall was just being hit and damaged and dented. And we did a small area just to prove the concept and see if this works, and it did. And that was the starting point to understand that plastic doesn't need to be just one type of plastic to have a great use as a product. This was the start of the pilot project. So we just did hexagon tiles like this. We did about 66 of them to just cover 5 square feet of space. However, it's very manual, labor intensive to do it on that scale. And so what we've developed is some smaller plastic sheets, but this is made with Goodwill plastic. And now they're much bigger than those smaller hexagon tiles, and we can cover more square footage with each sheet. So this is just some slow evolution of how we start a pilot project and then work to refine the product offerings that make it a little easier.
Yeah, just seeing what can be done with all the plastic.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I think by just having a passion early on, it's a very different perspective that I'm coming to the plastic or recycling industry with. It's not knowing all the chemistry behind the plastic and what bonds and what doesn't, but just looking at the product that we have access to, and then what are some end markets that would be able to apply it to, and not really get too much involved in the chemistry. However, that's a segue into the plastic fumes that are created while working with it.
Should you notice any fumes?
Yeah, absolutely. And working with the injection machine, you can control the temperature, which is great. So you just find the melting index for the type of plastic that you're working with, and just make it melt as opposed to burning it. But even then, there's still some off gassing just when you're melting it. So for me, I try to, well, I do wear a respirator, but it's in my garage. So, like I'll open the garage door to get some ventilation. But in terms of an actual ventilation system, there's nothing off the shelf that you can just go and buy for your small workshop or your garage to help further the plastic initiative. So for me, that is a big challenge. And early on, when I was just starting to work with plastics, I could smell some fumes, and I was like, okay, these are some toxic chemicals. Like, I need to protect myself. And so it was just like, I just have a respirator. However, looking back in 20 years, I'll be like, oh, that respirator wasn't nearly enough. In terms of what we have access to right now, that's the best that we have access to. Specifically, when we're working with Goodwill plastic, since it is mixed, there's a lot of different melting temperatures, where some melting temperatures are other plastics burning temperatures. So that is a challenging plastic to work with. And when I wasn't able to open the garage during the winter months, just because it was so cold, I couldn't work with the plastic because it was just too much. I had the respirator on, but the fumes were too much for the garage environment. And we do have a young family, so I didn't want to put them in any harm either. So, but yeah, definitely something that is noticeable is the fume.
Are you hoping to, eventually get a shop and then put in a system and everything? Yeah.
So with my construction background, I've seen some very extensive and detailed ventilation systems, and for different uses. And so what I look forward to is actually getting out of the garage, getting a facility or micro facility that I'll be able to get the proper ventilation and customized ventilation options as well. Because one of the things that I noticed is, if we're working in the garage or a small workshop, and if you do have that ventilation system where you have the duct running and exhaust overhead, it's going to be like a permanent structure where there's not much flexibility. So with these shops or garages where there's not a lot of square footage, it's important to have mobile systems in place too, because it also serves as a parking garage for vehicles. So, or just some storage. So you need to have an exhaust system that can retract and move around spaces. So that's something that I'm looking forward to, is working with mechanical consultants to design a mobile ventilation unit.
Yeah, that'll be really useful if you guys can figure that out.
Yeah, so everything starts off with I call it just a proof of concept. Can we solve my challenge? And if it's my challenge, then how many other people have this challenge or similar challenges? So then you just start talking to more and more people. And the precious plastics community is such a tight-knit group where people are willing to communicate with others, talk about some challenges and successes. And so, it'll be pretty easy to go onto one of those community pages and just talk about ventilation and show kind of what we're thinking about doing. Has anybody done something like that? So it's going to be a very collaborative approach to solving this. And something that I say to a lot of people is, I can't do this myself. Like, there's got to be a lot of other collaboration from a lot of other people that have experienced different perspectives in the industry to bring this all together to make an impact.
So when did you realize that we need to transform the way that we manage plastics?
Yeah, so I've been in construction for the past 10 years. And for me, it wasn't necessarily just a plastic focus. It was more so just waste. When we had our kids, we have 3 young kids. And just to see the amount of plastic that comes from having a young family, that's where it started to pique my interest more towards just plastic waste and how that's being handled. I think there's a big opportunity to look at how we're currently handling plastic waste and see that the blue bag program, it may have worked decades ago, but now what we're seeing is a younger generation that wants to see how plastics are handled now. There's a lot of focus on the handling of plastic at the end of its life cycle. So we're also starting to see policies come into place, such as the extended producer responsibility. And Alberta is the last province to adopt this policy. But I think there's a big opportunity to look at how we're handling plastic waste, whether it's on a small scale and we're able to commercialize that into a much larger operation. I think what we're doing is just showing the potential to handle plastic different. And there's been some comments, like, oh, this guy's gonna change the world out of his garage. Like, talk to us when he's really handling some large volumes. What this is just showing is, with a different perspective and different partners, we're able to at least come up with a strategy to handle plastics differently. And the other thing that we're really trying to focus on is how to create products for end markets that are useful, that will perform a very similar function to a non-sustainable product. And our early entry into a market was just selling these little discs as coasters. So, we did the hexagon tiles for wall protection with other molds that I had. We thought, okay, to really understand if there is an end market on the consumer side, let's see if we can sell these as coasters. And so we started selling these as coasters, and that allowed us to see that there is some support for recycled plastic products. But the other thing is when you're selling sustainable products or green products, what we've learned is we cannot price these at outrageous multiples compared to an existing non-sustainable product. We might have been able to sell 2 sets of coasters for if they were priced at $100 per set, or we could sell a lot priced at $30 per set, which is competitive to where other coasters were selling. And so just with that ability too, is just showing that there is plastic waste. We can handle it much differently, but we can also transform it into a useful, functional product that will serve a purpose.
What should we as a society do with plastic that already exists? So you kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we have an opportunity to look at this plastic that is a natural resource. There's been studies showing that it does not deteriorate in landfills for, up to 600 years. So it's a very resilient product that we can get multiple reuses on prior to waste to energies or landfilling or some other method on handling the plastic. So just the ability to look at plastic as a natural resource for one. The second thing is, let's make plastic have a value associated with it. And now it becomes a very valuable resource that in 20 years, we could be digging up landfills to try to get access to more plastic. There's the real potential to show plastic being used in recycled products, to show how versatile of a product it actually is. Talking with some municipalities, there's some that, like polypropylene or type 5 plastic, like yogurt containers, those don't even go into the blue bag programs. Those are automatically just going to the garbage because there's not enough value to collect that plastic, that they wouldn't be able to bale it and sell it in great quantities. So right off the bat, municipalities are told, do not put your type 5 plastics in recycling because there's no value. It would just go straight to the landfill. However, what we've been able to do is work with those type 5 plastics or those hard to work with plastics. And specifically this sheet here, this is made from yogurt containers, 100% yogurt containers. And what we're seeing is that there's flexibility. There's different properties with every single plastic type. So when we look at polypropylene, it is a great plastic that we could use for a lot of different end markets. But right now, if we're to work with municipality, those plastics would often just be discarded or just sent to the garbage and then landfilled. So there's a good opportunity just to explore all the different hard to use plastics. Another example of hard to use plastics is the single-use plastic bags. And that's where I first started working with plastics, is with the single-use plastic bags. And this disc right here, for example, This was our early version of tiles. This one contains 19 single-use grocery bags, and it weighs about 100 grams. It is dense, and that was the real start to working with hard-to-use plastics. And we've since ventured into, obviously, yogurt containers, disposable cutlery. They are good plastics and can serve a purpose. And and that's what we're excited to just continue exploring is just showing all the potential from each piece of plastic. I remember looking at Goodwill's Impact Center here in Edmonton, and they have pallets of single-use bags because a lot of their clothing donations come in bags, and we're able to transform it into, you know, some discs like this, or you know, maybe there's the opportunity to use them in these sheets for wall protection. I think what Precious Plastics does a really good job in is bringing a community together to show all the different opportunities. And that's what I really love seeing on the social media is just looking at how everybody handles it slightly differently. We talk about banning all of these single-use plastic items, and as good as of initiative as it is, single-use items also do serve a little bit of a purpose, especially as we're seeing in COVID times right now. So what do we do with all those if we just can't handle them, and you know they're automatically just going to landfills? What we like doing is just showing that it's good plastic. We can shred it up. We can turn it into something else.
That's one thing that Jewel talks about too, is she doesn't like to refer to plastic as waste because plastic is valuable.
Exactly. And changing that mindset from waste to a valuable resource, that's the educational component that really needs to happen.
In your perspective, what is the most important public message about plastic?
We need to stop looking at it as a waste. We need to look at it as a natural or a valuable resource that has multiple opportunities to be reintroduced to end applications that are functioning and useful to serve that purpose. And recently there hasn't really been a good demonstration of products that are 100% recycled, where we might see like a 5%, this product contains 5% recycled plastics, but we haven't been able to see a successful rollout of 100% recycled plastic products that are cost competitive. Back to the original question, yeah, I think it's just the opportunity to show it as a valuable resource.
How do you want to move forward, and what is a challenge you face in moving forward?
So moving forward, I'd like to move out of the garage and secure more space. That's going to be the biggest one. The biggest challenge working with plastic is the labels. So how do we develop a collection process that can handle municipal post-consumer recycling, types 1 through 7, that have labels? So, you know, dealing with each separate plastic type, so there's 7. So that's a challenge in itself, but now put labels on there, and that's a whole nother element of a challenge. So what we're doing is just looking and researching a lot of different systems and methods to remove labels from the plastics, and then that will allow a continuous throughput through the processing equipment, which will obviously have to shred and clean and dry the plastic. Once we identify how to remove the labels, then the rest is just going to be easier, relatively easier. But
do you mean the plastic sticker label?
It's either a paper label or a plastic label that has an adhesive under it that is gluing it to the plastic. And these adhesives are just like a whole nother element in how to remove them without keeping any adhesive on that plastic. On the small scale, what I do is I use a hair dryer, and I just heat up the label, and I just slowly remove the plastic labels and the adhesive. But not every label is the same. Not every label removes as nice one big piece. That is going to be the biggest challenge, is solving this labels issue. There's a few different methods that work, but on a larger scale with 7 different types of plastics, how do we come up with a solution that works in general for all types?
How can our listeners and viewers show their support and get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a website, rewaste.ca. We are on social media. Instagram's our primary, rewaste.ca. I think, if there's anyone that wants to contact or find out how they can be involved, we will be looking for volunteers early on to help with some of that sorting and cleaning until we do have the equipment to support the process. There's lots of opportunities to get involved. However, COVID has reduced some of those opportunities in working with groups. If there's anybody that wants to get in touch or has questions, please do contact me. I may not get back to you right away, but I intend to get back to everyone.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Corey.
Thanks so much for taking time and including me in this awesome project that you guys are launching.
We want to thank you for taking the time to watch this interview with Corey Saban. We certainly learned a lot and we appreciate your time and interest. We continue to film interviews with other knowledgeable people, so if you are interested in this project by the Regional Environmental Action Committee, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We have links and resources down below where you can support us and learn more about our purpose. Thanks again for watching and take care.